Hello, intuitive viewers. Welcome to Let's Chat on Sunday. I'm so glad you're all here. The gang is all here.
The gang is here.
Craig and Gina and Gigi by the Sea and Sandra and everybody. And Debbie's here for our first show of the year.
First of the year, oh.
Yes, this is the one. Yeah, I took a couple of weekends off because one landed on New Year's Christmas Eve and the other one on New Year's Eve. So I thought, oh, I'll just take it off and let people enjoy their stuff, and I'll enjoy my stuff, and then we'll get back together. But thank you, Debbie, for doing this.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
I've been wanting to talk about this topic for so long, and I couldn't quite figure out how to bring it in, but I just felt like it was a very interesting. For me, it's interesting. Anything about the ego is very interesting to me, and I love talking about it. But as it pertains to psychics and mediums, I thought it's even more interesting because it can take a lot of forms, right? But for people that are maybe getting to know you, don't know all about you, can you tell people kind of where you started doing this work, a little bit about your own spiritual journey?
Okay. So I wasn't prepared to talk about myself. Here we go. All right. Talk about ego, right? All right. So my journey started literally when my first memories were all involved in this unseen realm that we have here, the spiritual, but I didn't have any words for it. But I had a lot of experiences growing up connected to spiritual, what we would consider spiritual happenings, whether it was people who were showing themselves that had passed, or just activity. It was scary to me as a child because I didn't have words for it or whatever. But anyway, so that's the beginning of me. But I was always a seeker. I guess you would call me a seeker, a questioner, knowing that there was more because I was seeing more and experiencing more. And so always that seeker landed me in a container of the Christian container, because it offered a space where I could ask spiritual questions and do seeking that way. And that was just what was in my general world and what was available to me. But again, because I'm a seeker and a questioner, I didn't fit into those boxes either. And, but I continued to, that was kind of the foundation of where I came from. And then it kind of progressed into here I am now as a spiritual psychic medium, if we want to put words on it. I feel like we all can maneuver in this realm, and I think it's normal. But our world is not quite there yet.
Yeah.
It's
good. It's so much better, and it's grown. And I think that this, we can talk about it more, but I do think that the ability to be online and to talk online, kind of anonymously, so that and not totally out there. So I think that it frees up a lot of people to be able to talk about this stuff and feel comfortable, right?
It is. We're normalizing it. We are absolutely 100%. We're normalizing it, where it should be. And we're no longer being burned at the stake or anything like that. And I mean, I still do get comments that I am, of the devil and whatnot, but it's okay.
Right. So let's talk about the ego a little bit. And when we talk about the ego, I'm going to use the definition that is the Eckhart Tolle definition, because some people think of ego, they just think of like big inflated ego, someone who brags and that kind of thing. I think they're better than everybody and that kind of thing. But it takes on so many forms. His definition is the ego is identifying with your human identity. So that means your name, your family name, your family, what sex you are, what your orientation is, occupation, your family role, culture, religion. And the ego also it believes that we're separate and alone, and we need to defend ourselves and keep ourselves safe. Right. And so, and that we can be diminished by people's words or their actions or whatever. And then you have smaller ego things where it's maybe family drama or, getting offended or holding grudges and things like that. Or you have the bigger things with like war. That's basically ego run amok, defending your whatever it is, your religion or the way you think or the way you believe or the way you think the world should be. That's all ego, just in different forms. And I think that when we talk about, well, first I want to ask you, what form does your ego take? Because for me, it doesn't take the kind of loud braggart, brags about their accomplishments or what they've done, because my mom from day one was like, you do not brag. You do not put yourself above people. So my ego is still there, obviously, because I'm human, but it took the other form, which is wondering if you're good enough, if you can do stuff, you don't want to step on anyone's toes. But that also leaves you open to being offended often, getting your feelings hurt often. It's just a different form. What form does yours take, Debbie?
Yes. So I feel like mine's very similar to yours, where I took the opposite. However, it did kind of throw me into being projecting a lot. So I find myself over defending, very defensive.
Yeah.
So you talk about getting your feelings hurt or whatever. It's very similar to that, but my reaction to getting my feelings hurt is almost overprotecting of the hurt ego, right? So I become very defensive. That type of thing can take place if I'm out of balance and if I'm not aware, but it also offers me, if that is highlighted, then I know that I'm off balance between my ego and my higher mind, my higher self.
Right.
And that's where meditation helps, guys.
It does. And John of New, I noticed, is saying in psychology,
ego is
the awareness of the I. And Eckhart Tolle flips it because he says the ego is in defense of the little me. But the I, the big I, is what you're talking about, Debbie. Thank you, John. What you're talking about, Debbie, is that when you go into meditation, you feel something else there. That part of you that is the observer, that quiet observer in the background, the consciousness that you are, that doesn't have an ego. It doesn't have an ego at all. It knows it's safe. It knows it's always whole. It doesn't have that worry about being diminished or stamped out completely. It doesn't have any of those. A lot of it, fear, is a big ego. Can really make the ego come out and fight for itself. But yeah, I think. And well, I wanted to ask you too that because your background is it just reminded me when John said that your background is in psychology. And so when you started to understand the ego in that way, because I assume it's something you talked about in your psychology, in your degree. It is being aware of it. It's kind of being a step ahead of it. Knowing what can trigger you, knowing your tendencies, and either catching it quickly. This is the hope. Is that you catch it quickly and realize, oh, that's just my ego. And then it kind of, it almost kind of like makes it fade away, because you're not lost in the illusion. You're not lost in it doesn't carry you away. So you break the spell.
Yeah. So when that ego's kind of off balance, you find yourself in that protection mode, in that fight mode, in that constant like that. And it ends up creating that more and more for you in your circle if you continue to stay in that. And so I encourage everybody to recognize where you're at. Ego's good, guys. That's another thing I really want to bring across, is that I don't want you to try to live a life without your ego, because it's such a beautiful part of who you are. You're unique you, right? And so, and this experience here that we're having on this plane is that ego is important to be there in identifying this unique you. However, learning how to balance that out and and not allow that unique you to want to make everybody else unique you, right? And so, and that comes down to a lot of the programming that we are facing here through the centuries. We're programmed to believe so many things and see the world in a certain way, and like all the things that we're programmed, and we're breaking down those programs. But part of that also with the ego, it's important, because that ego piece and the programming, the false programming, that's really an area of healing that would benefit bringing in that balance that we're looking for between the ego and the higher self.
And when you talk about what part does the ego play, Debbie, in the shadow self? How does is it a tool to be used to figure out the shadow self? Maybe you know what your shadows are because you know how your ego operates, maybe. What do you think what's the relationship there with the ego and the shadow self, or this part of yourself you want to heal?
Well, if your ego self is in protective mode, it may be overprotecting and not allowing that healing to happen, because it's putting up walls and it's doing all these things, and again creating narratives of survival that may not be true, and keeps you in some of these shadow areas. And now again, there's balance to all of this. I also don't want you to think, oh, shadow side. No, I mean, we're a yin yang. This is, if it's all in balance, it's all good. It helps us with our experience here and growing. We're meant to have both sides of the coin for our experience and expansion. So, but yes, did that answer your question?
It does. And I wanted to, hi, Kevin, to bring in Kevin for a second, because he says one aspect of the ego is it brings to the surface the shadow side of us all, therefore a vehicle to further heal. And it's such a good point. And I think that's what you're talking about, is it serves a purpose. And you're right. We're always talking about how you do your spiritual work, and you want to be aligned with that. At the same time, you have to honor your physical self, because you have to do the physical things you need to do to be able to do this work or do spiritual work. You have to feed your body, and you have to drink water, and you have to do things that have to do with the physical that are, it's more of a functional or a mechanism. It's part of, you're right, the human self, and therefore it's a beautiful part, and the job is to keep us safe in some way, or to try to.
So I do want to say, however, that since we now have an understanding that there is a beautiful balance of ego, and I don't want everybody to see it as a bad part of yourself. Okay.
Right.
When it's balanced and working, it's a wonderful, wonderful piece. However, the ego, when it's not properly balanced or whatever, it can interfere with your spiritual connection.
Yeah.
And if the ego is being dominating, it creates noise in this connection. And so the clarity of messages coming through can be disrupted with this noise if the ego's off balance. So super important, if you're doing this work, to take extra care with that. Just like when you care for anything, any part of yourself. Let's say you are, I don't know. Let's say you're a writer, you write. So you take extra care to keep something conditioned to write. Okay. So whatever that is. So this would be extra care. If you do this type of work, it's important that you take that extra care over this area of who you are, your ego, keeping that noise level down. Because if you have a highly assertive ego, and you may inject your own thoughts, your own emotions, potentially muddying up the messages coming through. So
yes,
this is a good conversation to have, Kim, and especially this community, because I know a lot of the family here, they do receive messages, they do channel and things like that. But super important, even if you don't do this work, know that when you are wanting to put your belief in something forward, and you are closed off to and all up into only this, it is pretty similar. That noise, it disrupts any clarity or any awareness and expansion coming through, because you are so much into this noise here of the ego.
Absolutely. And the ego operates because of the brain, because of the identity, because of the things we attach to it and attach to ourselves that we think is us. And when you operate, you're right, that when you move into that spiritual self or that spiritual side, it doesn't really have anything to do with the brain. It more has to do with that alignment of that part of you that does not have an ego. It doesn't operate through the brain. That's why when Eckhart Tolle talks about getting into that place where you're sitting in the seat of the soul, or you're in that alignment in silent meditation, that you're in something that's a different consciousness. It's not the same consciousness as when we're just like this, just, kind of thinking and talking, and, that it's different. And he usually says, you can't think your way there. It's because it doesn't have anything to do with thought. It's beyond thought. It's something else. It's more felt. It's more a feeling. Because you, in a way, you let everything go. There's a beautiful if you want to try this, for anybody that wants to try this, and it's a beautiful way to get there, is he does this meditation called the Die Before You Die meditation. And what you do is you sit there and you strip away. You just sit there and think, okay, what if I didn't have a name? Now I don't have any family, and now I don't have my job, and now I don't, I'm not part of a group, any kind of group. I'm not a Democrat. You strip away everything. And what is left is that perfect soul, that perfect being. We are all behind this. This is just an expression that we're experiencing on the earth. And Alicia wants to agree with you, Debbie. Exactly, Debbie. Ego is essential. It's attached to our human identity, each unique in our own way. To learn the lessons on the path we chose here, I've learned we need to find balance in everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you're right. It is a balancing act, and it's also a noticing, like you said, being alert, aware. And again, Eckhart Tolle says, don't try to stamp it out. You're not going to. Yeah. Don't try to just not have one. Just notice it.
Yeah, just be aware, and you'll know if it's moving more towards a not balanced ego, and if you're bringing yourself into your own belief system into a message or something like that, you'll know.
You will.
And I do have someone asked, what to do, and I do have some. I did write down a few things that we can do to help with bringing that balance in, but I just wanted to say I do have that, and we can do that at the end. But
we can do that at the end, and then maybe people can they want to practice, later today as part of their Sunday thing. That would be awesome. So let's talk about it in terms of psychic mediums, because I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I feel like this particular type of individual is ripe for the ego in a lot of different ways, right? Because it can be that the braggart, I'm so great, I know everything. You have a week where you get everything right, and you're like, yeah, and I could, you feel kind of a bigger than life. And then you have the other side. I wish I had more of that type of ego. I don't really have that. But then you have the other side where something goes wrong, or you have a not such a great day, and you just kind of, you can really dip in your ego and just feel like, I'm diminished, I'm small, what am I doing? Why am I even doing this? Have those kind of days as well. And that is all ego. But what do you say about, in fact, I was going to say, I remember in our book club, we read Gary Champion's book about how to be a medium. Oh. And in it, he talks about his start in I think it was like the early 80s, something like that. And he would go around to fairs and read at fairs and do these big gallery readings where he'd read for a bunch of people. And I thought, Debbie, if I had to do that to start doing this, there is no way in hell, heaven or hell, I would have been able to do it. Yeah. I was just like, that just takes such a belief and a I don't know what that is, such a belief in your gift and such a belief in your team. And to me, that was very gradual for me. It was such baby steps. And I do wonder if, because of certain types of egos or certain types of people, that this time is bringing out a whole nother type of reader. Mm-hmm. Because it is different to do it online where you're in your room by yourself and you can kind of just pretend like about yourself. But but go ahead and talk about just psychic mediums and the ego in general.
So I feel like when you were telling me his story and how he did it, he really has a beautiful understanding that of he's a vessel for these messages to come through. So that's a true medium where you're like acknowledging that you're just like this vessel, and he was able to not even, I feel like there was such a beautiful balance there that he doesn't question.
Not at all. Not at all.
So for you and I, Kim, because we come from the other side of the track of the ego,
right,
that we question everything.
Yeah.
I mean, not anymore, but when we first started,
absolutely,
we would have been questioning, is this, because
including your sanity.
Like we lived in that lack, and we lived in that that humble, which is also, that's also a little bit, that is being humble. I'm going to be humble. That's also ego, because I also is feeding you on some level. So that can be unbalanced as well, you guys. However, Gary Champion is a beautiful example of being an open channel and not questioning, because he didn't, he kind of almost allowed it to kind of go past any type of self, and just allowing this to happen. And so he kind of represents that really well. You know him. He doesn't stop the flow. He'll just blah 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 and blah blah blah, and like that's unique to him, I think.
Well, it is, and I when I asked him about that, about his just ability just to say it, and he there's things that he gets wrong, or he doesn't, or he's not sure, or if it's, or they can't pinpoint, what what it is or whatever, and he just keeps going. But he says that he's in a permanent state of meditation. That's how he puts it. He's always in kind of a meditative state. He's never out of that. And so he is also one of the people it's always on. So whether you're standing next to him at the grocery store or whatever, it's gonna be there. And I think that is also some psychics and mediums operate that way. Other ones, like myself, I need to turn it off and have a break. I can't be on all the time. And what about you, Debbie? Do you have a closed sign and open sign?
Yes. And I set that up a long time ago. So it's not like I have to be intentional about it anymore, but I set up a whole system, because once I moved through empath healing, being an empath and not knowing it healing, and releasing all that energy that had, attached because I didn't understand the whole concept of being an empath and what it does to you and your body, and as you carry it. I set up a system where it's like, okay, when I'm out and about, this isn't something that I'm just open to. And so that's a misconception when people meet you and they know that you work as a psychic medium. They literally think that I'm reading them the whole time. And I'm like, no, I am not reading you. And I'm not seeing your loved ones with you. I'm not that person, because I set that up before. Now, before I set up my system with my team, yes, you better believe I'd see loved ones with people. I would be receiving messages. My emotions were going up and down. I just didn't know what was happening to me. I thought, this is crazy making. I'm exhausted. And I was exhausted. I was tired all the time.
Yeah.
So I just set that up with my team. That, yeah, I'm not an open vessel. I will be intentionally, when I sit down to open up, that's when I am open. You know what I mean? So that's set up.
Yeah.
And I also have a gate. I think I've we've talked about this before possibly, but I have a gatekeeper that I've set up in the spiritual realm. So they open and shut that gate, and they know me. So
I love that. And I'm similar. It's easier for me when I'm home, because when I sit in this chair, when I sit in that chair, they know it's time. When I put on the computer, I can feel a different kind of energy come in, and it's like it's showtime, or they know it's time to go, or whatever. They give messages.
Yeah.
And the other thing about doing this work, whether it is, old school in person, face to face and big gallery readings, or if it's more intimate this way, is that the ego can come out of nowhere. Because just at the moment, I feel like, I'm really like recognizing my ego all the time, and I'm recognizing it. It can catch you out. And I'll give a good example. I won't say the exact thing that happened, but what I will say is that when around the time of our retreat, I got hurt feelings about something, and was very kind of got up on my hind legs, basically. And here we just come back from this amazing retreat, this amazing experience. And because of one thing, I kind of, I feel bad. My feelings are hurt. And it completely caught me out. And I'm like, there's my ego. There it still is. But I think that it is when you think of yourself as connected, and you think of yourself as spiritual, and you're working on it all the time, I find it just very interesting and fascinating how it can still be there, and reminding you that, you're still human. You're not transcending. You're still here. And when things like that happen, Debbie, what for me, just noticing it and backing up and saying, okay, what's going on here? Where did that come from? Really helps to, level it out, and also make me aware of where it is, where it's still very, very, alive and well. But when you have something where you're like, it catches you out, or you didn't expect it, or there it is, how do you?
Here's another opportunity for deeper growth. Right? It's another opportunity for deeper healing, and a deeper awareness, and more awakening. And I like that you normalize that for us, because I want everyone to know that if something calls out your ego again, that's okay. We're having an experience here, and it will be triggered. The most beautiful thing about it, though, is that you recognized it. That means you've come a long way. So good for you. But this is an experience here, and we will continue to deal with deeper areas within our ego that are still part of some old programming, or believing old programs and narratives. And so it's just another opportunity for deeper growth. You said we just came off of a retreat. We all were taken to deeper and higher, or however you want to say it, places, and awakening, and however you want to say that. And so you were in a perfect place to even take it deeper. So what a great opportunity for you, right?
It really was, because it really made me again kind of revisit these places in my personality, my upbringing, my those different of the programming. It reminded me of that, and made me so aware again. And you're right. It was a little bit like, hey, I didn't know this was still, so blatant. It's like, oh, of course it's still here. Of course it is. And like you said, it is an opportunity go within and see what's happening, what's going on, and what still needs to be healed, you know?
Yeah.
And somebody was just asking about Gary, and yeah, he's in the later stages of cancer. And so, yeah, just keep him in your prayers, that he's pain-free and that he is, doing well. And so, yeah, just keep him in your prayers.
Yeah.
And his wife, Bunny, too.
I was just going to say.
Yeah. So I want to get into some things that we can do when it comes up. And I just wanted to get a couple of these comments. So James says,
I love you too, Luna.
Oh, that's a sweetheart. We're here to learn things we don't know or haven't mastered, which is why it gets challenging. And we are here to teach and support others with the things we do know or have mastery in. I think that's
an example,
James.
And sharing your story, like Kim shared your story, and you shared how you were able to pause and kind of take a look at it and readjust some of the system around that, and realizing, oh, this is not true, and bringing some deeper healing. So yeah, share your stories. So you want to take a look at some you wanted to take a look at the
exercises, things that we can do.
All right, so we talked a little bit about one right now, and the first one is cultivating self-awareness. And so regular self-reflection, introspection, recognize your own biases, desires, fears, beliefs, and so if you know yourself and you know these your biases and your desires, your fears, your all those things, then that awareness in itself offers kind of a I don't know, what do you call it? A leg up. That's the word I was like. You're like, that's what you were looking for? Yeah. A leg up, because you're aware. You're aware that, oh, this is my bias right now that's coming forward through right here. Okay. So just being aware. Another thing, well, in doing this type of, if you were doing this, when you're doing this work, is practicing detachment from your personal emotions and so forth. So you're able to kind of go, okay, I'm going to step back from my personal emotions, my attachments here, so the ego can't bring any interference in a time in a session, or bringing through messages or whatever. Right. I guess you can use that. Of course, you could use that in just regular daily life too. But understanding, so you can maintain a clarity when you're having a discussion with someone, that you're not coming from an ego-based and just creating argument, right?
Well, right, because the emotions of it, that's what really gets you to, that's that part of that kind of where you step further into the dream, because your emotions get involved, and now you're fighting for your life, or you're fighting for your cause, or you're fighting it when that emotion comes up. That is it is where the ego kind of can really grow and flourish, is when you're in that ego, in that emotional state. You're absolutely right about that. And when you can step back from that, and there's an exercise, well, we can talk about it later, but there is an exercise where you kind of watch the news or watch something, and you pretend as though it already happened. It's in the past. And that's what it does. It takes away those immediate emotions of, I can't stand that person, or isn't this, I'm sick about this situation, or this horrible situation. If you're kind of watching it almost like a third person, or kind of from a distance, then you can take and process a lot more in a very different way.
Yeah. And I feel like Eckhart Tolle has something that he says to do in the moment, and I can't seem to grasp onto what he says about it, but I kind of feel like in the back of my mind I hear him talking about this. When your ego's initiated.
Oh, well, I know one thing he says to do is when somebody says something, or when somebody says something and you can feel your ego is triggered by that, or that that's a thing for you, to not do anything, not say anything, to kind of sit with it and see what happens. Because what happens is you'll notice that you're not diminished in any way. Whether it's somebody says a slight to you, or they're very, maybe they're very, condescending, or I use this a lot because when I read A New Earth, I was still in working with a lot of musicians.
Oh, okay.
And you want to talk ego, but they could say something or do something, and I would sit with it. And he was right. It doesn't diminish you at all. It doesn't take anything away from you. It's that reactivity.
I knew he had something to say about that. I like that. It didn't diminish you at all.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
It's the reactivity. If you can that conscious choice where you're kind of stepping back from it, and then you can respond in a different kind of way than you might if you were just reacting.
Okay, so that goes along with my practicing that detachment to that. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so foster that that more humble, receptive mindset to situations as well. So embracing humility. Now, for those of us who kind of are on the other spectrum on this, maybe this might not be the best suggestion because we're already, humility to us is a programming piece that probably still needs to be worked on. But in general, it's part of that detachment piece. It's almost like, okay, embrace humility in this, and just kind of do that detachment piece there. And then grounding. Find some grounding techniques, meditation, mindfulness, energy work to maintain that balance in your sense of self, right? So for those of you who do practice Reiki or energy movement, you can do that with intention within your Reiki practice. But meditation and walking, any grounding type of practice will help you with maintaining a healthy balance.
Mm-hmm. And why does grounding help, Debbie? What does it do?
Because because we're not living in that. It brings us out of that place. So if you're caught up in the ego and you're caught in something, okay. Let me find an example here. Well, I put my 2024 predictions out, right? And it's a very, it calls in a lot of people who are not part of this community to watch it because of the algorithms. People want to know 2024 predictions, right? So you're going to get a lot of people in that aren't part of this loving community. And they're going to say what they want to say. And they're going to attack you. So they're going to attack me personally. They're going to find very hurtful things to say to me because they, what do they have to lose? They're just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But their hopes is that I'm going to see what they said and it's going to hurt me, right? That's their plan. It's going to hit my ego and then I'm going to lash back. And how many times, I don't know if you, Kim, but probably not you, but I've received messages from people that are just super targeted and hurtful, and really my ego goes in protective mode. And, I'm writing this huge response, which I then delete. I never put the response up, but I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to. But it does offer that opportunity to really check that that ego injury.
Well, and it is because when you, especially for people on this end of the ego spectrum, is because it takes so much for us to get up the courage to put ourselves out there, or to say something we're seeing, but maybe no other reader's seeing it, and you're kind of like, why am I seeing this? But here, I'm going to say it anyway, and it's kind of scary. And then like you said, you kind of get reaction or whatever, and I think that's wise, because it does take up so much just to do it. And then when you get knocked back down, it can really, really just lay you flat if you're not prepared.
Right. If you're not prepared, or it just offers you, and that's a moment where you can kind of step back and go, I'm just a messenger. I channeled, I'm a vessel. It came through me. That's that. And, so it does offer opportunity again to go deeper or release, or, I can tell you, I've gotten so much better over the years. Overall, I think we've been on here for 7, going on 8 years now. Can you believe that?
I was just thinking, I can't believe that. It's so weird. Yeah.
Anyways, but we've been on here for a long time. So now it's so much easier when you receive those types of messages. But at the beginning, gosh, it would take me down. Yeah.
I don't know if I ever told you this story. I may have. I don't know if I said it in a class or on the channel, but I'm just going to repeat it anyway. One of the first, when I did the first live, the first time I did, of course, I had my sister and Cassie with me because I was scared. And I got a scathing letter from a woman who was so upset because, and I understand because it was kind of about a very touchy subject. And we'd said a father instead of stepfather, because as you know, when you read it, father is just father. They can even be a father figure, it can come through as father. Mm-hmm. So, and especially if you're an empath, you feel it. It's more of a feeling. And, and Cassie and my sister are all both empaths as well. But it was this whole thing. And I got this scathing email, and you're a phony, you're a fake, blah, blah, blah. I mean, just mean. And all the things that you're scared to hear as a sick me, because you try so hard.
First step out the gate.
So I was like, I shut the computer and I had Cassie read it. And of course I'm upset and I'm crying. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm shutting down the channel. I can't do this, Cassie. This is so mean. People are so mean. And she's like, Mom, this is the internet. This is just, you need to get past this. You need to not, it's just this is one opinion. She sounds like she's going through a lot. This probably has nothing really to do with this, but she's like, it's so obvious. This is, big and overblown. So she's like, something else is going on here, but you need to get tougher because this is what it's like. And it's not personal because it really isn't. It's just, it's more saying kind of where they are, what's going on with them. And so I was like, it took me a few days. I have to admit, I was so just distraught. But once I could release from the ego and, like you said, kind of pull back and emotionally, I realized that, she doesn't understand the process. She doesn't realize that it's not like someone just talking in your ear, that it comes in pieces, and you have to do your best you have no context. Right. You have to do your best to put the pieces together, especially when nobody's answering you or nobody's right there to give you feedback about what you're getting or give it context. You're just kind of blah. And it changed the whole trajectory of my channel because that's when I decided to start doing things live and doing the scribbling so I could talk through it and show people how it works and tell people how it works. That email was what changed the whole direction of the channel. And it was because I could pull back from the ego and look at it in a different way. But when you're in it and those emotions and everything, I could have very easily been on the other side of it and closed down the channel and said, screw this. I don't have to take this or whatever. But it didn't. It was a real growth experience, not only for me, but for the channel. And then it led to teaching and led to all these other things.
Yeah.
So it really was a negative that turned into a positive, but only because with Cassie's help, I could put my ego aside and really look at it and see what was really going on here.
Yeah. I can't tell you, Kim, how many times I wanted just to quit. I'm like, oh yeah, I can't do this anymore. It hurts. It's still, it hurts. And what people say can hurt. And, but again, what we do with that, on our end, when someone, and it's a lesson to me too, what I say is, I need to be mindful. Mm-hmm. And that was part of the practice here too, is being mindful. So being mindful what we say, because that is throwing energy out there. These comments that come in are meant to hurt.
Right.
They're meant to be darts. They are meant to hurt. So, but what we do with the darts on our end is what counts. But yeah, I tell you, learning how to deal with hurtful comments has been a big deal for me in working with my own ego response.
Absolutely.
Healing from a lot of narrative that's wrong, a lot of programming that has, so offering that for my own growth there, it's been, I guess, positive in that way, because I feel like I've grown a lot. Tower moments bring growth.
Yeah, it brings growth. And it's an opportunity for growth, right? It can be that thing that just makes you wither and say, forget it. And I, like, again, had Cassie not been there saying, Mom, this is just the way it is. Get over yourself. Get over it.
Yeah. Thank God for that generation.
Yes, absolutely.
Things a little bit more clearly we get to see. But I do feel that it was also part of my growth in fostering a clearer and more authentic connection to my spirit team, where I wasn't living out of the defensiveness of my ego all the time. And so I had to have those towers, like Barb said, those little towers, to then build up this balance and truth and healing within the ego part of me.
Absolutely. And those are the kind of things that you don't want to see about yourself. They're hard to work through. They really, really are. Mm-hmm. And I totally agree. And I think it was Gina had brought up earlier that these big moments of what we'd see as negativity, or that they really are opportunities to see something differently, to grow from it. That's the Course in Miracles, right? The miracle is seeing something from a different perspective. And that's exactly what it was for me, and that kind of thing. And that was a miracle. It really was, because it changed everything. Where it could have shut down everything. It was like either or. I could have done one or the other. And it did it, because I credit Cassie, not myself, but because of Cassie, and because I had the courage from her, courage from her to step back and look at it in a different way than just reacting.
Yay, Cassie.
Yay, Cassie. Cassie's the best. Yeah. So, and she, actually she's a good, and maybe your daughter's like this too, but
Yep.
she's a good example of quiet confidence. That girl she's quiet and she's pleasant, and you think that you could walk on her. No, you can't. She is so clear on her lines and her boundaries. And it means she's, something else. And I do think there's something in this generation, maybe because they've had to deal with all of this and the onslaught of, anonymous, you're a jerk, I don't like you, you're ugly, whatever.
Right.
It just made them a little bit, have more tenacity, right?
Yeah. 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 When you were talking about her and how she was, I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds just like Sierra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's impressive to see.
It is impressive.
So any parting words, Debbie, about just on ego, how people can recognize it? Any parting words about this?
Okay. Okay. So what I'm hearing here with this is, again, embracing your ego part, because I think it's gotten a bad rap. And so thanking your ego for doing what it did to survive survive this planet. However, also really stepping into that, bringing in balance and truth as well, and healing. But the main thing is this embracing, because part of some of what we've learned here is, not here, but in general, that the ego is bad, blah, 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 and it's not. Ego's good. Ego is good. But how it's been used is where the challenge comes in. So learning how to embrace the ego and utilize it in its full capacity, in its healed capacity with your higher mind, is where we want to go here on this planet. So embrace.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Debbie. And thank you, everybody, for coming and hanging out with us. I love these Sundays and being able to talk about some of these fun. I mean, I could talk about spiritual subjects
Me
all
too.
the time. I'm such a nerd that way. I could talk about it all the time. So I am so grateful to be able to do that. And thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Have a great week. I'll see you next week. And you have a great one too, Debbie. Anything coming up on your channel that you want to tell people about?
Oh, just the regular stuff. I do have my automatic writing class starting on Tuesday. So if anybody wants to join in, just a 4-week class. There are a few spots left, maybe a couple. But there are a couple spots left if you're interested in spending some time with like-minded folks and opening up that channeling piece that everybody can do. Tuesday it starts. So.
And what time of the day is it morning or afternoon, evening?
It isn't afternoon. You ask such hard questions. I'm kidding.
Your ego's getting triggered, Debbie.
So it's 3 p.m. Eastern time. So that would be noon Pacific time. It is that. Yeah.
Great.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Michelle knows.
Noon. She's like noon BST. Great. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Debbie. We'll talk to you guys again. Have a good one. Bye.